You were born in the Ice Age, not as a metaphor. Pick a date, 20,000 years ago, the coldest stretch of the last 100,000 years. Same species, same brain, same body you're sitting in right now, dropped into a world with the thermostat broken. What actually happens to you? Start with the map, because the map is wrong. So much water is locked into ice sheets that sea level sits roughly 120 meters lower than today. Britain is not an island. It is the wet edge of Europe, connected by a drowned plain we now call Doggerland. Siberia and Alaska are one continuous landmass. Ice kilometers thick sits on top of what will one day be Chicago, Stockholm, and Manchester. The coastline you know does not exist yet. Neither does agriculture, pottery, writing, or the wheel. So where are you born? Probably somewhere warmer than you'd guess, and almost certainly indoors. In 2020, Alexander Pryor and colleagues published work on a site called Kostenki 11 on the Don River in Russia. It's a circle about 12 meters across, built from the bones of at least 60 mammoths, and it's around 25,000 years old. Inside, they found charred wood, burnt bone, and traces of soft plant tissue, including charred roots. So, a structure, a fire, and food that wasn't meat. Somebody sat in that circle and cooked. That's the first correction. You are not born shivering in a cave mouth. You are born into architecture. The second correction is your clothing. Not a fur draped over one shoulder. Tailored, fitted, layered clothing, sewn with eyed needles, which show up in the archaeological record tens of thousands of years before this point. A needle is a small object with an enormous consequence. It is the difference between wearing a hide and wearing a garment. And a garment is what lets a tropical primate walk into a landscape that will kill it in hours. That primate is you. Your body has essentially no cold adaptations worth mentioning. Everything keeping you alive out there was invented, not evolved. Now, your childhood. Here is the part that tends to surprise people. You are not raised as a disposable extra mouth. At Sungir in Russia, archaeologists found the burial of two children, laid head to head, covered in thousands of beads carved from mammoth ivory, alongside spears made from straightened mammoth tusks. Each bead took time, enormous, unrecoverable amounts of time. Somebody sat in the cold and made them, for children who had already died. Which tells you something no bone chemistry can. You are born into a group that grieves. What is your day actually like? Cold, mostly. Steppe grassland, dry wind, herds of reindeer, horse, bison, mammoth. You move with the animals, and your relationship with them is intimate and dangerous because you have no distance weapon that works reliably at first, and your food occasionally weighs 6 tons. The people who came just before you paid for that. Eric Trinkhaus, working with Thomas Berger, examined the pattern of healed injuries on Neanderthal skeletons and found something striking: a concentration of trauma in the head and neck, statistically most similar to the injury pattern of rodeo riders. Not falls, not warfare, large animals at close range, going wrong. Note the word healed. Those injuries were survived, which means somebody fed a broken person until they weren't broken. Do you get old? This is where the Ice Age quietly rewrote itself. In 2004, Rachel Kaspari and Sung-Hee Lee measured the ratio of older adults to younger adults across a series of fossil populations. In the Upper Paleolithic, the group you've been born into, that ratio jumps dramatically. Suddenly, there are far more people surviving into what we'd call grandparent age than at any earlier point in human evolution. That's not a footnote, it's a hinge. Because an old person in a world without writing is not a dependent. They are the only copy of the archive. Where the river floods, which plant stops bleeding, what happened the last time the herd didn't come. The winter your grandmother survived at 7 years old is a survival manual, and she is the only place it is stored. A population with grandparents can accumulate knowledge across generations. A population without them starts over every time. So no, you would not be a brute. You would be a child in a decorated coat, inside a mammoth bone house, listening to an old person explain the weather. And then the ice pulls back, the sea rises, Doggerland drowns, and within a few thousand years, your descendants are planting seeds. Here's the last thing. You didn't have to be born then to carry it. Svante Pabo's team sequenced the Neanderthal genome and found that people with ancestry outside Africa carry roughly 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA, inherited from encounters tens of thousands of years ago. Fragments of an older, colder world are physically inside you, being copied every time a cell divides. Every one of your ancestors made it through. Not most. Every single one. In an unbroken chain, through cold that should have finished them. Because someone made a needle, someone built a wall out of bone, and someone old enough to remember refused to stop talking. You were not born in the Ice Age. You were born out of it.